Ladies and gents, welcome to UX, and this is Total War Warhammer 3 review by the channel MandaloreGaming Part 3. Yeah, we saw up until the point of Khorne. He was talking about Khorne. I guess now he's going to talk about Slaanesh. Yeah, this Warhammer 3 review so far is very in detail, right? This is one of the, I guess Total War Warhammer is MandaloreGaming's at his best, I guess. Even his Warhammer 2 review is one of the famous videos from his channel, which is just a year old. So this is Warhammer 3. It already has 1 million views, and it's barely been, I guess, few days. So it's already in detail. I like how, Warhammer 3 has a, hand-holding system which someone like me can really use. Not just because I'm newer to Total War series. It's because I'm newer to the whole this genre type of gaming. So yeah, I'm looking forward to play this game. I think it's already out, but I've been busy. But I'm definitely going to play this game. We'll see if I'm going to play this on channel or not. But yeah, so let's watch it. It's Slaanesh. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more, which type of channels to react to more. Comment down if you want to react to any specific channel. This gaming review thing is kind of newer to me, right? I usually, before when I started the channel, I used to do history and all these scientific type of things a lot. Gaming type of thing, I never thought to do a review because I didn't know channels like this existed, right? More creative content like, Mandalore, then there is Seth, there's Maxer. I thought it's all going to be IGN type stuff where they just talk about pros and cons and that's it. But yeah, so yeah, let's watch this one.
An official horny police.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's talk about Slaanesh now. Slaanesh is the god of pain and pleasure, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. His depraved followers are mortals and demons who thought the Cenobites were just too vanilla. In-game, their faction is led by the demon Nakari, who, fun fact, was once enslaved by Malekith. Or Nakari tricked him into letting him be a slave.
What?
He likes that sort of thing. Fact was once enslaved by Malekith.
That's scary. You've been Malekith from Elder Scrolls. Malekith, I think, I could be mixing them up because I remember that somewhat because, I was really, I don't know. I really wanted to know what Drukkaris are, dark elves, right? How dark they are. I don't know, I was just fascinated by them. So I'm pretty sure that Malekith is a leader of the dark elves, Drukkaris, right? I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Well, I understand similar name.
Or Nakari tricked him into letting him be a slave. He likes that sort of thing. Where Khorne was about anger, Slaanesh is about sheer depravity.
They will never know the safe word.
Considering the company's weird relationship with blood, I thought they might try to tone Slaanesh down a little. Thankfully, they didn't. I'm not saying it's lust from beyond, or that you should be expecting a free the nipple pack to go with the blood pack, but I think they found a good balance. In the beginning, the advisor says to be careful not to expose your flank to Scarbrand. In reality, this is the exact kind of thing Nakari would do to piss him off more. However, properly using flanks is the key to winning with this faction. It's all about rear charges and hitting the right spot in the right time. Most Slaanesh units are ridiculously speedy. Even Nakari is constantly Naruto running around the map. The mortal followers are made up of a few kinds of masochistic marauders. They're not great at fighting, but effective for tying the enemy down for the real fun, which is getting shredded from every other angle by the demons. The cavalry and chariots are good at quickly repositioning for a new charge. Ideally, you maneuver around the map hurting the enemy using your units and spells, and then deliver the perfect charge when the positioning is right. Though on the battlefield, out of all the factions in the game, this is probably the one I'm the worst at. Am I losing it? Maybe my shoes are too tight? It turns out there's a few factors at play, including a nasty bug. For one, the cavalry and chariot mass and charge bonus isn't that high. Even a perfect hit on exposed weak units can feel like a tickle. The second is that there's a bug with how charge reflection works. This is used on some anti-large units like halberds and pikemen. The idea is if they're braced for a charge, it won't
So I'm pretty sure after this video came out, the Total War would have patched that out, right? Because they would watch this. Why wouldn't they? They got 1 million views. This is as publicity as you can get with creative content channels like this. But yeah, it's a bug. As far as Slaanesh's whole squad feels like one of those sneaky things, right? Not a brute power, not some like Zinch type of conniving. It's just one of those sneaky hitting at the right moment, flanking and all that crap.
Well for units charging them from the front. How it currently works is if they countercharge, that damage will still apply, and possibly even when they're just moving around, that damage will apply. I've hit units from the back with chariots, and my chariots melted instead of them. This bug is easier to tolerate on other factions, and especially their cavalry, because they're much beefier. These are glass cannons with virtually no armor, so I do get how they're supposed to play, but I don't know how much is muddy due to design or to some kind of bug. Slaanesh does have 2 aces in the hole. One is the Lore of Shadows magic, and again, this is either a bug or something is incredibly overtuned. The lore of Slaanesh does have some direct damage spells, but again it's more about positioning. Stuff that causes rampage, reduces unit speed, you get it. For the new Shadow's Pendulum, you line up your trashy tar pit, wait for the high-grade enemies to come, and then you click the funny button. This might not be balanced.
What do you mean? Of course it's perfectly balanced. Why shouldn't a very easy-to-access spell wipe out entire multiple...
Hey, how did you... What? Okay, the second is that they do have good units, but they can fill the holes in their roster on the campaign map. Warhammer 3 has had a huge rework to diplomacy. This is the perfect time to cover what's new there, and then come back to Slaanesh-specific stuff.
I guess that Slaanesh thing that he said is a bug about the cavalry charge is not really a bug. I guess Slaanesh, his whole squad is like that. Some things are not going to be damaging, as overall it's not going to be damaging, it has to be sneaky something, but at just right moment, if you can have power moves like that, easily accessible power moves that kind of balance the field. So maybe it's not a bug, you know, his cavalry not having that much power. Because let's be honest, Slaanesh specializes in pain, debauchery and shit, not really killing, right? I mean, Slaanesh wouldn't want to kill you immediately. He would want to, you know, torture you first.
There is a dedicated fuck off button for trespassers. If they don't pack up in 2 turns, you can declare war on them with no diplomatic penalty. No more violating the NAP on my watch. You can offer or receive diplomatic threats where refusal results in war. How dangerous you are as a faction is now taken into account, and united against us events only happen if you're starting to become dangerous. You can finally trade or directly gift cities. Your allies behave in smarter ways and are better at coordinating with you. Alliances themselves have also gotten a big overhaul. If they have the space for one, you can build an outpost in an ally's city. They can build one in yours too, and it has 3 levels of upgrades. The outpost provides a garrison to the city, so if you're ever under attack, you'll have some allied units there for you to control.
It's
not
embassy.
Purely a defensive benefit. Over time, you build up a new resource with your friend called Allegiance. To get it even faster, you can fulfill special missions that your ally issues to you. This can be spent on recruiting a limited number of allied units and...
Yeah, I think, you know, what should have been implemented there is that you can use one of their structures rather than you building one. Because it doesn't matter how good your alliance is, everybody would be sweating if you actually build a structure, right? I mean, that's why people create embassies at certain countries. Don't create forts and castles, for fuck's sake. Fortified structures. So it doesn't matter how good your allies are. You could use their structures to have been the mechanic rather than you building one.
...to your army. Let's say you're having some demon trouble as Kislev. You only need to call up your friend Carl to borrow some heavy artillery. With enough of it, you can flat out directly control an allied army. The rework has made keeping and maintaining allies something really worth investing in compared to before. They don't get in your way nearly as often, and they're way more directly useful to your war effort. This is a fantastic addition, and way more than I was expecting. With this new system, Slaanesh has some advantages. Slaanesh can build up seductive influence over susceptible races like humans and elves. Being friendly with them diplomatically is one of the better ways to get your claws into them. Once they're in too deep, you can mind break them and they become your vassal. Your speedy demons can then have partial backup from the simping auxiliaries. Even better, for a cost, you can seduce enemy units directly before a battle. They'll only be with you for the one fight, so feel free to be as reckless as possible with them. Technology can give you a higher budget for...
Slaanesh sounds like the most fun to play, man. You can create alliances and slowly stab them in the back and make them your own. Even in the battle, you can, you know, pull the units towards you. This is ridiculous.
...seduction and make the process of getting new vassals easier. There's also your special resource to consider, which this time around is just devotees. These can be spent on pleasure parties and cities that can buff things up for a while.
Let's get your ass back here!
They could be spent on disciple armies or spreading cults across the world. Of course, it's Marienburg. You could ally with the competing demons too, but their corruption will end up being a problem. It's better to turn the mortal races into your thralls and wipe out your otherworldly neighbors. Besides what feels busted about the main roster, it is a fun campaign. The only thing I found strange is that the cost of seducting a unit doesn't scale based on wounds or the rank of it. It also seems like some units should be immune to it, especially since the AI can do it to you as well. My biggest issue is tied to the diplomacy AI, it just hurts Slaanesh the most. Factions will still declare war on your vassals and don't seem to account for you. I think they fixed this in 3 Kingdoms, but it's popped up again here. It's a fun campaign, but for now I wouldn't rely on the core roster. Now, I don't want to get too bogged down in demons, so I'm going to take a great leap forward over the next 2 and talk about Cathay instead. Cathay is an interesting place. It's actually the largest human empire in the setting, but until recently it never got much attention. While its subjects are mainly human, it is ruled by immortal dragons. If they desire it, they can shift into a human form or go right back. Currently there are 2 places.
Is Grand Cathay part of Total War Fantasy? that I don't know about. I mean, it could be Kislev and everything is part of the, you know, fantasy. So yeah.
Stable dragon leaders. Mao Yang, who controls the northern, much more lush provinces of Grand Cathay, and her brother Zhao Ming, who controls the more arid western provinces. He's more of a wild card due to warpstone exposure, but can come up with some innovative ideas.
Father loves me, despite my difficulties.
Cathay faces constant danger from neighbors, but the worst are the forces of chaos. Fortunately, they've constructed the Great Bastion of Cathay. It's worked wonders for keeping demons out of their land. They do send trade caravans out to the Western world, but sometimes things get perilous. All of this and more is reflected in their unique mechanics. You don't have a singular special resource you collect. No kinds of labor points or something, thank God. Instead, you have the two forces of yin and yang, spiritually significant in the east and the Olive Garden of Tattoos in the west. To maintain harmony, you must have balance. Technology, characters, or buildings have a yin or yang value that contributes to your overall score. Balance can swing one way over the other. It'll begin to debuff what you have more of and cause public order to fall. In this example, the more yang
Damn, I like how the yin yang element with this kind of a Grand Cathay thing, right? So this is more like a Chinese culture type of empire. Obviously, the name for this. So they also implement a yin yang thing. So if you overpower something, that's not going to work, right? That will literally hurt you. You'll get debuffs. Income from yang buildings -5, income from yin buildings 5%. Alright, so you have to keep balance with what you do, I guess. If you don't, it's gonna hurt. That's just fucking awesome.
I have, the less money yang buildings make. But yin buildings are making more and are now cheaper to construct. The more out of balance you are, the more extreme these effects get. Balance gives significant buffs, and it makes you always aim to have it. The system makes you put more planning into your empire building. Taking over cities can give you new buildings that throw things out of whack. Tech is always adjusting it one way or the other, so you'll need a good amount of foresight to stop things from going out of control. On occasion, you'll
I'm gonna say this game is way too heavy replayability element, right? If you take one faction and play it through a lot, like you play the shit out of that, oh look at that, I'm done, I'm bored, what should I do? Oh, let's play as some other faction. They will have completely different elements. Like if you play as Grand Cathay, you would have to worry about how you build structures, you have to think about yin yang and all that shit. If you play Slaanesh now, right, Slaanesh's team, you have to, connive and strategize like how I'm going to take over other people, like he said. Slaanesh has that element. This is great.
Dilemmas that put points on one side or the other. These give opportunities to get things back on track if balance has seriously been shaken up. At first I thought this would be annoying to deal with, but I ended up liking it a lot. It makes you consider some progression options you might not have otherwise for the sake of keeping balance. And making smart decisions in that constraint can be pretty engaging. The actual building economy isn't the richest anyways, but that's what the trade caravans are for. You pick their route, destination, and how much money they'll be carrying. Then you see what happens. As the turns go by and the caravan moves through the game world, all kinds of events will pop up. These can be a lot of fun. Sometimes it's a small-scale battle. There are opportunities to recruit special foreign units into the expedition, and situations can affect everything from army abilities to diplomacy. There's a solid sense of progression to it too as you clear out the roads and your army and your caravan lord becomes stronger. If you're committed to turtling and defending the wall, these frequently give you stuff to do. The act of defending the wall is making sure a Cathay faction owns the gates. If Chaos takes it over, it just becomes a rubble pile that all their hordes climb over. Chaos will build up to attack it constantly. Besides the old-fashioned ways of getting rid of them, there's also a magic compass you can adjust. This can generate extreme attrition to melt a lot of them, but the other rewards the compass offers are tempting enough that you want to keep shifting them around. On the campaign side, it's a very rich faction mechanics-wise, and harmony extends to the battlefield as well. Units are also marked as yin or yang. Luckily, these don't affect the overall faction score, which would be a surefire way to make it annoying as hell.
Yeah.
Instead, keeping the two
Not
kinds
the
of units
fight.
close together gives them a combat buff.
If you, I understand building empire, yin yang system. So now, as you build is a long-term thing. But with every battle you have to worry about that would be annoying. So that's, I guess they probably added that, and somebody later realized like this is going to be annoying. Let's not do this.
Harmony on the field will keep your forces at max effectiveness. They won't melt into dust without it, but it's strong enough that you do want to utilize it when you can. Again, maybe making you play in ways you wouldn't otherwise. As you might expect, they have a balanced roster. Instead of Kislev's Oops All hybrids, Cathay's units are much more specialized. This emphasizes the whole harmony aspect even more as you try to find ideal combinations of units. You've got different kinds of reliable gunpowder infantry and some artillery, solid infantry line holders, good schools of magic, fast-moving cavalry, and some other junk. For being ruled by a despotic luck dragon, there's a lot to like about Cathay. Any real issues I have are just minor oversights, like there being a skill to increase leadership on an unbreakable unit. The Terracotta Sentinel does not give a single fuck. Not since the Overlord tank in Command & Conquer Generals has there been such an effective border expander. Now, as for the Great Bastion itself, the wall on the battle map is enormous. The scale of it is absolutely insane, and I believe it's kept chaos out. At least until you turn around and see where the battle actually is. It's a much smaller gate, and the enemy will approach with towers and rams, and it's time to talk about the siege overhaul.
Wait a minute, what? Did I miss something?
Until you turn around and see where the battle actually is. Same Great Bastion itself, the wall on the battle map is enormous. The scale of it is absolutely insane, and I believe it's kept chaos out. At least until you turn around and see where the battle actually is.
Oh, so this is the map's wall. Is that what you're saying? The map ends here. An actual wall.
Insane, and I believe it's kept chaos out. At least until you turn around and see where the battle actually.
And this is the actual wall. Oh, this is the city. Alright. That's just fucked up. That wall feels like, Game of Thrones level of shit. Like, look at the size of that thing.
Actually is. It's a much smaller gate, and the enemy will approach with towers and rams, and it's time to talk about the siege overhaul. Warhammer 3 has completely reworked city battles. Not only are there wall sieges, but also minor settlement battles. These are typically big maps with lots of room to maneuver. The old-style simple city grid is nearly completely gone. The level design also has some advantages for the owning race who built it. An Empire map has lots of elevation for ranged units, wide areas to maneuver forces around, and choke points to try and funnel enemies into. It's made to consider all kinds of defense variety. An Orc map has messily connected wide roads, with a lot of room directly behind the walls to pile in the boys for fighting. A Dwarf fort does have narrow controlled roads. This accommodates how they move their deep-ranked formations and makes it harder to unexpectedly flank them. Vampire maps are also kind of chaotic with winding city streets, but they also have tall buildings which help obscure their forces from enemy ranged units. My point is, there was clearly a lot of design thought put into these layouts. These on their own are significantly better than before. Additionally, instead of a single capture point, you'll have several. Remember the survival battles? Well, the tower and barricade system is present here too, and only that. You have a set amount of supplies for building before the battle starts, and on the campaign map, you might have found ways to get more. The moment someone lays a siege, the defenders will begin to take attrition. This effect can be reduced, and you can generate more supplies for each turn under siege. Maps will have several supply points that passively generate them as the battle goes on. Each point controls a zone of defensive barricades and towers. If the enemy captures it, you lose that passive supply income, and every defense under that zone of influence gets destroyed instantly. There are also key victory points. When attackers control these, they generate tickets to outright winning the fight. So in theory, you have several zones that are fun to fight in spread across the map. It's a big overarching battle instead of a single point blobfest. In survival, the AI always beelines.
Wow, so siege is so fucking complex and different with everybody, right? I mean, depending on who you're sieging, right? Whether it's dwarves or empire or whatever, you have to think differently, like how it should be, right? I mean, with dwarves, like it's gonna be straight roads, isn't that? You can't really flank them, but with the empire buildings like that, you like, okay, I can't really bomb the shit out of them. There are many structures in between. God, this is so good. And you have to tactically think about like which area to take, which zone to take for supplies. Do I need supplies? Should I take this key important point that would give me victories? Man, this is really complex game, man.
It's a single point. But here, they sometimes beeline towards a single point, and then they lose their minds. Did they spawn a unit that can't capture here? I can't even count how many units have just run through supply points. I've seen units run by capture points, change their mind and turn around, and then they run away from it again. It actually started getting really funny to see how close they would get before getting scared and running away from it again. Look, holy shit, they're almost on the border now. And oh, there they go. I'm not kidding when I say most points I've seen the AI capture have been on accident, simply from a large enough crowd constantly moving through it. Sometimes their brain outright shuts down and they sit outside the settlement not doing anything. Or start running around like headless chickens outside the settlement. Even spamming magic on them non-stop would not unstick them. Sometimes they get on a point but forget they need to fight for it. I've seen lords walk to the victory point to die no matter what, including some who will die outside the walls because they move so slowly. Well, in this clip he's not moving at all. That also happens sometimes. Any minute now. Okay, there he goes. I've seen them play chicken outside the points. I've seen them have prayer circles around the points.
Look, man, I'm not gonna lie. I've said this in one of the older, previous reaction part of this, that it's really hard to get AI right in games like this because so many different animals, different NPCs you have to count. But this would get annoying, right? If people are not running after objectives, AIs are not running after objective or trying to defend, attack whatever particular objectives. People get stuck around it, stuck like that. That's a major fucking issue, right? If that happens, then it really need to do something about it. They really need to patch it if they can. Because this is the one point you don't want AI to fuck out, right? Because that's the whole point of the game, right? This is where the pressure comes from. This is where the competitiveness comes from. Otherwise, you'll be like, oh, look at that. They're going to take, oh, look at it. They're just running around and round around it. There's no issue there. Like, what the fuck?
It's like having multiple nightmare TF2 games happening at the same time. Where's everyone going? What are you doing? There are issues that make it
That would
not
be annoying.
completely their fault. I've had units get stuck inside the terrain or trying to dock with it like it's a wall. Sometimes you can pass through your own barricades, and sometimes your guys get stuck in them forever. I've seen battering rams not disappear and block off the gate, and sometimes I'm not running the show anymore. Where do I start? I'll try my best, but you saw how it is. In good news, attacking an enemy city does feel a lot better. The AI is still horribly buggy, but in ways you might not obviously notice, like running our units all over the map or docking melee units into walls. Even that second might be better, because sometimes now walls actually block off a ranged unit's line of sight and they can't fire at all, or they simply can't dock to walls anymore. Anyhow, when playing defense, someone might argue the AI ignores supply points because it makes more sense to capture the victory point. Which could be true, but them yo-yoing on and off it makes me think they are taking it into account. They seem to notice them better once they do have your victory point. What happens typically is if you do build a bunch of towers, the AI will lead a suicide charge towards your victory point. If they're physically blocked off, they might fight, but I've also seen some take the longest way possible around the entire map to get there, getting torn apart by defenders and towers along the way. It's extra interesting watching unbreakable units the AI has. They never run away or fall apart, so you get to see them fulfill what they were trying to do the whole time. You guessed it, it's usually getting on or at least sort of near a victory point. What's really ironic is that a minor settlement battle can be easier to defend than a proper walled siege battle. The larger cities can have multiple points for tickets. A minor settlement only has one to worry about. Due to this, I can reliably take a walled city a lot faster than a small settlement. The AI is also better at focusing and not spreading its forces all over the map. Sometimes the stars align and the AI works really well, which makes me think it might be a map-specific issue, but there's a whole lot of maps with issues. The thing is, I've played these maps in multiplayer, co-op against the AI, or going head-to-head. If you're fighting a smart enemy, these can be incredibly engaging mechanics. The attacker wants to be aggressive in taking points and reducing...
That's my problem with this. See, the mechanics are so good. If you want to play it with AI, right? If you want to play it with AI, that would be, really fucked up that AI would just bug out like that. That is a major issue. I'm fine with all the bugs. But this is one kind of breaking bug that I don't like about the mechanics, because the certain points are the whole thing, right? When this adds the pressure, this is the whole point. If your enemies are not trying to do that, they're just running around and just runs away, at this point, okay, what the fuck? I'm pretty sure they're going to fix this, because this would be a big issue. And he uploaded this before the game launch, so maybe they'll fix it in day 0 patch, day 1 patch, whatever.
Supply, keeping the defenses down. The defender has to react and keep key zones under control. I'll skip over all the arguments about whether or not it's too arcadey and say that yeah, it can be a blast, if you have an intelligent reactive enemy, or sheer numbers that outweigh how dumb they can be. Here's the part I flat out don't understand. We've had Siege AI that has known bugs and hiccups on a simple grid with a single control point. 3 has brought in sprawling maps tailored to the strong points of the defender. If it was just this with the victory points and no supply system, I think me and plenty of other people would have been happy. You might have special faction abilities down the line or something. But now we have these huge new maps and a system that lets you place path blockers and towers all over it. Total War AI having to react to a dynamically changing map sounds monstrously complicated. It creates so many situations they have to adapt to, and that's beyond the pathfinding just breaking. If supplies were only a pre-battle resource you could build with and the fight itself only had the victory point, then at least the map is set. It would still be a ton of parameters to consider, but I can see the AI handling it better that way. These games are absolute monuments of coding, work, and simulation. It's rare for it to have a genuine meltdown on a regular battle map, and it's been that way the whole trilogy. It's just sort of funny when that happens. So this is what you call asking for trouble. Yeah. I think the AI just being able to handle layouts like these would have been more than enough. Right now they have to deal with that, and towers springing up to murder them, and barricades blocking off their pathways. You could say to ignore the supply system, but the points are still on the map, and it circles back around to me wondering why we have it at all. 3 has...
It would be funny if AI fucks up on the simple things like that and can, basically adapt to the changing map. That would be funny, okay. I think that's what's gonna happen, right? Because developers added that changing map element. So they wouldn't have just put that shit there like, oh, this is a good idea, let's do that. No, they probably, created a script in a way that AI actually, as soon as the map changes, they process that, right? Other bugs are kind of slip through the gaps because of previous game issues, right? But this, they probably thought of that. So I'm pretty sure changing map is not going to be an issue, right? They probably work fine with that. But these other things, they're going to be bugging. And even that, I think the level of effort they're putting into Warhammer 3, I think they're going to really patch that shit through. They're going to focus on that.
Has some fun sectioned off multiplayer campaigns. There are 8-player games, but even better than that, simultaneous turns. It was pretty stable from what I played too. You can easily juggle unit control around to buddies no problem. The gigantic battles are also a lot more fun in co-op since you can manage it better handing off units to friends. Fighting an overwhelming force in a city can now be fantastic. Like I said before, this works best with overwhelming enemies, or smart enemies. Multiplayer has both. I think it's unreasonable to want all the work that has been done scrapped completely, but this could be ideal as a multiplayer exclusive or custom battle mode. Or maybe special maps like the Bastion could keep it, where it could be especially hyper-tuned. This is a single wall again. That seems workable. Okay, completely ignoring the supply stuff now, let's talk about the walled sieges. It's still just towers and rams, towers and rams. Judging from how the Slaanesh tower looks, there's a scrap design for that battering ram somewhere. Anyway, with the newly designed maps, ass ladders need to be limited or gone completely. I started pretending to not have them while sieging cities and really trying to take gates from the inside and stuff, and the act of just fighting on the new maps is great. At their core, they're incredibly well designed. There are still siege towers and plenty of ways to blow up walls, so maybe we've progressed past the need for ladders. As for the settlement battles, no matter how they are and how far they move the cities apart, I still think they're probably too frequent. Maybe you should need to have at least a tier 2 settlement before you can get a settlement battle, just to make them less frequent, especially in an area that's changing hands constantly. Again, these are only a portion of the battles. There are the regular ones, and choke points and ambushes have been overhauled to be more like 3 kingdoms that have an escape point, but I am in awe of how messy sieges are. It's still strange to talk about because it feels like I'm not even engaging with it properly. At least compared to before, I can see where the fun is that needs a lot of polishing, compared to it being dull if it worked perfectly. For now, if they are too much, you can always auto-resolve, or the enemy might ignore the Great Bastion and just move right through it.
Alright, you know what, I'm gonna stop here. I have to go. It's, I guess, what, 26 minutes. Alright, but yeah, siege thing, feels really complex so far, and I think it's gonna improve. Even if it has bugs, I'm pretty sure it's gonna get patched in the future, and once everything's just polished, this is gonna be one of the best game ever. I don't have much experience with games like this, strategy type of top view and all this type of where you control lots of units type of game, but I'm pretty sure this is pretty complex compared to the other games. Not just Total War, any other games, right? This is way too good. I mean, sieges and everything is messy because, let's be honest, in real world they are messy, right? They are not clear cut. So they really went up a notch with this one, the changes, I guess. It's because this is in the next gen with SSD on the new processors with lots of cores. They probably can't handle it. That's why, yeah, it could be that. Right, people, that was Total War Warhammer 3 review part from MandaloreGaming. I guess next part is going to be last one. It's already 20 minutes of the video left. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the reaction, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards, check out the in cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.